Welcome to Load the Box. We are excited. Today's a big day. The 2024 NFL Draft Combine is officially underway in Indianapolis. The workouts don't officially start until Thursday, but today was press conference day, so lots of microphones lined up in a big room, everybody taking their turns. First it was Kevin, then it was Kwesi. While Kwesi was talking, he was trying to speak over the loud voice of Mike McDaniel sitting to his right, so that was entertaining. Jordan, any immediate takeaways from the press conferences today?
Yes, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah had a quote about Justin Jefferson and the possibility of trading him. Kwesi said, point blank, the thought has not crossed my mind, which to me means he's gone. That is Rick Spielman classic. Go to the combine. We have no intention of trading Stephon Diggs, Percy Halvin, and then a couple weeks later, holy cow, look, we just traded our best player. So Jefferson, congratulations, you are a Washington Commando, and the Vikings are going to select Drake May, it looks like. I think that's the way that this is all playing out. You heard it here. This is breaking from Load the Box. Yeah, I mean, that was really it. Like, he said the thought hasn't crossed his mind, and he's a general manager, so you have to take everything he says with a massive helping of salt behind it, because it's like, hey, he could be telling the truth. He isn't contemplating trading his best player. He also could be saying, hey, everyone that's called me over the last week saying, would you do it for a second round pick? No. Clearly, he's my best player. I want 17 picks, and most of them have to be in the top 100. And I don't care that bankrupts your franchise. We don't have to trade Jefferson. He also had a good quote about how a lot of contracts don't get done after year 3. And he said there's a reason for that. There's usually some I can't remember the exact word he used, but I'll say like trepidation or there's some hesitancy, if that's a word. Hesitation, I guess, would probably be the actual way to say it. And he said whether that's from the team or from the player, usually you just kind of want to see what happens in year 4, and then you get the deal done. And we were close last year. I don't see why it won't get done. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on all that. I think, to save time and avoid my speculation, Justin Jefferson's not going to get traded. So we can put that aside. We don't have to worry about that. And to your point, Jordan, if he does, it's going to be for a haul and a half, not what some of these Patriot fans are mocking. Jefferson to the
Mac
Patriots.
Jones and a third round pick.
Nonsense.
Deal break. Would you do that? Who says no, Will? Who says no to this trade? I can't get on X.com lately because that's all it is. Is like the latest one was the Chiefs sending Valdez Scantling, their first round pick, the 32nd pick, and I think their second round pick, the 64th pick, for Justin Jefferson. Who says no? And I was like, the Vikings say no, and they probably like assault you for offering such a bad trade for the best non-quarterback in football.
The other thing that I think needs to be noted, this will not require conversation because we've talked about this ad nauseum in this offseason already. The other nugget that I took from Kwesi's press conference that I think was interesting, not necessarily telling of anything, because we know how they feel about Kirk Cousins. We know how Kirk Cousins feels about them. Obviously, at this point, it's a negotiation, right? So there's going to have to be a negotiation that happens, and that's basically what Kwesi said. But the direct quote that I thought was interesting was he said, Kirk Cousins is someone we can win the ultimate prize with. Which I thought was very interesting because it was this very direct notion of, we've all been saying all offseason of, hey, if the Vikings think they can win a Super Bowl, okay, go ahead and sign Cousins. If you don't think you can, move on. So there's something interesting there. There's a whole lot of parsing that you could do. Does that mean Kwesi thinks that the team can win the Super Bowl this year? Or is that just a generalized statement of, yeah, Kirk Cousins is good enough to win a Super Bowl? So I thought that was interesting. Could be telling, could just be word salad.
Yeah.
But
what you said, Kwesi said that, correct?
Kwesi said that. Yep.
Kwesi also said Alexander Madison did some great things for us this year. So he said a lot in this press conference. And whether he believes all of it or not, I think, like it's GM speak, but I think there were some nuggets in there. I want to talk about the most exciting. By the way, I don't know if we've discussed this. Last week's show, it was just me and Dustin. Will could not join us, unfortunately, but that's okay. Me and Dustin had a hell of a time talking about quarterbacks and, not really debating, is Jaden Daniels better than Caleb Williams? Just talking about how they were going to fit with the Vikings and what the paths forward for the Vikings were in this quote-unquote loaded QB draft. But if you haven't checked that show out, check it out. We're going to get to tonight some defensive backs and some linebackers and what's the other position? Some guards. How could I forget my favorite position in football?
Yes.
But some big news out of Minnesota today as Josh McCown is hired to be the quarterback's coach, maybe the passing game coordinator. I don't think so. ESPN said that. Everyone else said no. Chris O'Hara was still going to be the passing game coordinator. So I think ESPN is lacking a little bit there. But Will found a scoop on Josh McCown. Will, take it away.
So this was the spiciest nugget of the whole day for me. It kind of made my day, and I'm happy to move on with the rest of the day. Now, Jordan Reed, he is funny enough an ESPN NFL Draft college football analyst and insider,
Friend of the show,
and friend of the show. Now he's now a friend of the show. We're gonna have to bring him on.
Yeah,
and he said in 2019, Josh McCown was an assistant coach at Myers Park High School in Charlotte, North Carolina. The quarterback at the time at Myers Park High School was no other than Drake May, the highly touted quarterback out of North Carolina. This is just exciting. It's there's really nothing that you can draw upon this other than, hope and tantalizing just belief in something that's probably not going to happen, because it would probably require the Vikings selling their souls to the Commanders to get the second pick, to get Drake May. However, it's just exciting to think about.
I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I say it every week on the show that I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I can hear Dustin Baker jumping and screaming for joy as this connection has been made between Josh McCown and Drake May, because he is a very, very, very big Drake May fan. Someone who is not a big Drake May fan is Ben Kurt, the former Packers quarterback who now I think plays in the UFL, or he's going to, and he also streams and does a bunch of stuff like that. He has a YouTube channel. He said he is Mason Rudolph with less arm talent, and I was like, what? And he was like, no, that's not an insult. And I was like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's a big time insult to say someone is Mason Rudolph. That's not
worse.
Yeah, Mason Rudolph, but not as good. And it's like, well, Mason Rudolph's not very good, so you're saying he's not good? Basically, he was saying, calm down the hype about Drake May is Justin Herbert, and maybe let him be Drake May, which I can get behind that aspect of we probably shouldn't expect him to just come in and be a top 10 guy day one. It would be cool, though. It would be really cool. But yeah, that is obviously exciting. And congratulations to Josh McCown. His brother Luke is also a coach around the league, isn't he? I believe. We're gonna have to check that.
I'll do some quick scouting on that. Well, actually, Josh McCown was the quarterback coach for the Panthers last year.
Okay, that's what it was.
Luke McCown is not in the league, I believe.
So I got that backwards. I thought
used to play, of course.
Yeah,
but, yeah.
I thought Luke was the one that coached and did everything, and now Josh was joining. But it looks like Josh has been in the league and is just making his way to Minnesota as the QB's coach. Very, very fun. Very breaking news. This is going to be a big week for football fans, especially draft heads like myself who are excited to. I mean, get to see these guys, hey, how fast is this O lineman? And, all these things that don't really matter. Can't wait for the leaked, what's the intelligence test that CJ Stroud failed.
Oh yeah,
So
S2 or whatever.
yeah, like he flunked it so bad. It was, oh my God, this guy's the biggest dummy in the history of football. And then he goes out and he sets records as a quarterback. So all of this stuff that ultimately, John Ross, anybody remember John Ross? Wide receiver out of Washington, got drafted to the Bengals, fastest 40-yard dash time in combine history. Does not play football anymore. I don't think he got a second contract, to be honest with you, because he couldn't run routes. He was just really fast. So it's just a great time. It's just a great time, and we've got some prospects to get into, Will.
Absolutely. Perfect segue. Lots of prospects to talk about. We'll try and be a little more efficient maybe this time than we were last time. However, we got 3 positions to talk about. I think we're going to start with linebackers. It's a position of need. Obviously, the Vikings are really without any linebackers under contract outside of Brian Asamoah, Ivan Pace, and William Kwenku. And you can't go into a season with that as your only linebacking core. There's no Troy Dye anymore. There's no Jordan Hicks anymore. Obviously, pending re-signings and everything. So the draft, of course, is the first and simplest way to build your team, build your future. So let's talk about some prospects at the linebacker position, Jordan.
Absolutely. For my money, probably the best, and we should specify linebacker, not edge rusher. This is Ivan Pace's running mate, the Jordan Hicks role. First guy I'm going to go to is Peyton Wilson out of NC State. I don't know that the Vikings are going to be able to get him. If he was there, because obviously maybe they trade up or whatever happens, I don't know that Peyton Wilson is going to be there. He might be a late first-round pick. He could even be a second-round pick. He might fall into the second round. If the Vikings maintain their draft position and Peyton Wilson is there, round 2, pick 11, I would hammer it home. He's just a freak athlete, man. He is so fast for a linebacker. He tackles well. I mean, there's really nothing that he can't do. It would be easier to say what he can't do. And what he can't do is be a pass rusher because he's never been asked to do that. He is a coverage linebacker. He's a run-stopping linebacker. He's not Micah Parsons, who's going to come in and, they're going to say, oh, well, we need an edge rusher. Go do that. Like I said, he's fast, he's tall, he's long. Just everything is good on him. I always love whenever I'm reading the weaknesses for linebackers and scouting reports that I'm looking at. And one of the biggest ones that they have is, he just doesn't rush the passer very well. And it's like, well, that's not really his job. So he's not good at doing other people's jobs, but he's really, really good at what you would ask him to be doing. So if Peyton Wilson was there in the, kind of late, early second, I would slam that pick home. Another guy who I've kind of fallen in love with is Tommy Eichenberg. You'll notice a thread with some of this scouting that I do. I tend to fall in love this season anyway. I tend to fall in love with Ohio State defensive players because I think Ohio State had a pretty good defense this year. And Eichenberg, granted, he's not as violent as Wilson. He's not as he doesn't blow up plays in that same way. But look, he gets guys to the ground one way or the other. Again, not a pass rusher. That's obviously, we understand that. He doesn't have the same freak athleticism as Peyton Wilson, but I think he is an NFL athlete. I don't think we're talking about a guy who's going to be, just getting blown out like old Chad Greenway was, in his final year in Minnesota. So we're talking about an NFL athlete. You just don't want him mismatched onto the other team's best receiver or Alvin Kamara if he is running routes, that kind of a thing. And he just plays with a lot of good instincts, which is something that to me is super important at the linebacking position because I do think linebackers they're really they are who play action is meant to fool, right? If they are supposed to bite hard on play action and give that little 15-20 yard pass up in their zone that they're supposed to be occupying. So the fact that Eichenberg plays with such good instincts is a pretty big deal to me. And then finally, I'll end it with this: Maurice Liufau. He is the long-haired guy from Notre Dame whose name I told you I was going to butcher. But he jumps out to me, one, because he's a Gold Domo, so I got to watch him play live last year. But, I don't know. I kind of like Eichenberg more than him. I do think he is like my third favorite, and that goes against a lot of draft builds. A lot of draft builds say he's like probably a third or fourth round pick, whereas Eichenberg's more of like a fifth or sixth. I would flip them, but this Notre Dame kid, and again, I'm sorry that I'm just not even going to try to butcher his name over and over again. Where he excels is in coverage. He gets lost a little bit in the run game, which is a big time negative for me as an NFL linebacker, but just the way that he instinctively knows how to play zones and his understanding of how to play zones as a linebacker against the pass, I think that's a massive, massive strength. And it kind of goes against what Ivan Pace is good at, which I kind of like in pairing them together, where we would have this Notre Dame guy as the, hey, I'm really good at defending the pass, so you can count on me to do that. And then you would have Ivan Pace with that, I am just shot out of a cannon every time I go towards the line of scrimmage. Good luck. And I think those two could kind of build off of each other. So those are my three at the linebacking spots.
Awesome. Do you were mentioning with Peyton Wilson that the lack of pass rush is, you could even maybe just chalk it up, like you said, not his fault. It's a scheme thing. Wasn't asked to do it. The other two guys, I see that Eichenberg from Ohio State, at least he had a couple sacks last season.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean that he is a pass rushing menace, but where do you see those guys falling on the pass rush skills?
They don't. Wilson is actually Peyton Wilson. I think I have him right in front of me. I don't know why I'm going to guesstimate here. He had 6 sacks last season. Eichenberg, I believe, had 2. So they're more blitzers. I think. I don't think they're really asked put your hand in the dirt and go play defensive end. All three of these guys are true. We're gonna drop back with the pass. We're gonna have to decide whether it's a run or a pass, and then make our decision on how we're gonna play it accordingly. And I mean, Peyton Wilson is just kind of different, man. I mean, I think he is special. And he's not even the top-rated true linebacker in this class, but I think that he makes a case that he should be. He's just really good. I would love. This is the problem with the draft. You fall in love with so many guys that are first or second round picks. You can only get 2 of them realistically. So I would love to have Peyton Wilson. The problem is we're not taking him at 11. That's way too rich for a linebacker. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and it is something worth noting that I think the idea of having a menacing pass rusher from the linebacking position, the inside linebacking position, would be a luxury more than a normal trait.
Yeah.
I mean, think about even Eric Kendricks. When he was at the peaks of his powers, he was a fantastic linebacker, possibly one of the best, if not the best, inside linebacker in the NFL. He would only get a couple sacks a year, and it would be on a double A gap blitz. It wasn't something where it was part of his game so much. It'd be a couple times a game they'd send him and Barr on a blitz, and so it's not really something that, in my mind, is of vast importance to kind of what you're saying. And also, if you get a guy that in Peyton Wilson who is said to not have much pass rush skills, but yet ends up with 6 sacks, there's something to work with there, And are you looking for your inside linebackers to be an extension of Danielle Hunter, or are you looking for your linebackers to be an extension of, the secondary and that sort of thing? So I think we're on the same page with that.
Yeah, and I think it's it gets lost in this new wave 2024 defense. What is a position? Josh Metellus is a safety and a linebacker and a nickel and an outside corner, and it gets lost that it's okay to have guys that are just really, really stinking good at their position. That's not a bad thing. Just because they don't have position versatility, we don't ask Harrison Smith to go cover, I'm trying to think of like we don't ask him to go cover DJ Moore or whoever the best receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, because he's not good at that. He's not a good man safety. Whereas Kyle Hamilton, sorry for the PTSD here, but like Kyle Hamilton
Again.
can go do that kind of thing. And I'm just saying that because he's like one of he's considered one of the better safeties in the league, as Harrison Smith has been. We've never asked Harrison Smith to go man up one of the better wide receivers, or even sometimes the better tight ends in the league. But other guys can do that, and it just kind of goes to show that like. There are spots for these guys in the league, I think. These are just three of my favorites, and obviously I think Wilson would be a day one, like, no bueno. He is going to be linebacker 1 probably, and Pace continues to be that second guy.
Yeah. And, I mean, to further this point and maybe end the linebacker segment, there were only 8 guys in the NFL last season who played inside linebacker that had more than 5 sacks. 5 or more sacks, I should say. So... You're like another good data point here. 2 guys that we love from San Francisco, right? Fred Warner, Drake Greenlaw. They combined for 5 sacks. So it's just not really part of the position as a normal measuring point. So Anyway, I think we can move on. We're going to talk a little bit now about sort of not necessarily the most position of need, although I think we would all acknowledge that it is a position of need in some sense. It's the cornerback position. The Vikings have plenty of guys under contract. They got 6 of them: Murphy, Booth, Blackman, Ward, Evans, and Najee Thompson. You could point to 5 of them being guys who could realistically get snaps this season. Probably not going to see Najee Thompson on defense. However, the Vikings corners were not necessarily a strength last season. Byron Murphy was probably considered our best, and he really wasn't that great. And so it is a need. There's also the question of, is it a need in the draft, or is it more a need where you go get somebody like Xavier Howard, who's probably going to be a free agent here now, and a more veteran guy who can be Patrick Peterson 2.0 and finish his career here and teach up the young guys, coach up the young guys. Maybe you draft one in the 7th round kind of thing, but it probably isn't going to be the first thing they prioritize. But there's a couple names out there, right, Jordan, that I think we can at least touch on.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you're saying all of this, and this is if the Vikings re-sign Kirk Cousins and Quinion Mitchell is there at 11, he's the pick. He's out of Toledo. He's this small. He's not small. He's 6 foot. He's fast. He's lengthy. And his one downside was he was like probably the best corner in the country. I guess he had 2 down. Wow, June is excited. He had 2 downsides. 1, he played in the MAC. 2, they didn't ask him to play press man all that much. So he comes to the Senior Bowl, and the coaches at the Senior Bowl say, hey, Quinion Mitchell, we think you're one of the best corners in the country, but you played against MAC wide receivers, which are pizza delivery guys, and you also didn't play much press man. Go play press man against some of the best wide receivers in the country. And he dominated all of the wide receivers he went up against. It was like he was bound to be a press man corner, and his coaching staff just fumbled badly at Toledo, hence the reason they coach at Toledo. So Quinion Mitchell, this is like my Leatu Latu, like, I love this pass rusher, I want him as a Viking so badly. Quinion Mitchell also joins that list of like, holy cow, these guys are just built differently. These guys are going to like define the NFL for decades, or like a decade plus in my opinion. I like
one quick thing I want to ask you about. I don't think this is going to be on your list, so that's why I want to ask you. How do you feel about Cooper DeJean? He's the guy from Iowa who's getting all the pub, all the press. Maybe it's because he's the only white cornerback we've seen in 100 years, but
that's what it is.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious how you feel about him.
Man, he's just like, he just feels like a safety, and that's not me being like he's white, so he has to be a safety. He's a zone corner who is like, he's a really good zone corner. I just am curious on if he will translate to the NFL as a zone corner, because I feel like he's going to be asked to play more man. I'm rooting for Cooper DeJean. I love watching his tape. I also love the punt returning ability that he has.
Yes.
But the more I look into him and the more I see of him, it does feel like, Oh yeah, he's in a zone and he breaks on the ball and breaks the play up. That's what safeties do. Like I think he could be an elite level safety, but I don't know about a true Kono. I would love to see him get a shot at Kono, and if he does go to safety, I think he would be one of those safeties where it's like, hey, Cooper DeJean, go man up, Travis Kelce. Oh, go man up, the other team's best tight end or one of their best receivers. He's not going to be a true just like, center fielder who stays back all the time. He's going to be active and involved. I don't want to say Harrison Smith because he does have better coverage skills in a one-on-one situation than Smith does, I think. Or Smith did. That was never really Smith's thing, was his cover skills, like in man. He's going to be a first-round pick. If he's not, I'd be shocked, and he should be. I think he's really good. I just don't know that he's the best true true cornerback in this class.
I appreciate that insight. Carry on. I cut
absolutely.
you off mid-sentence there.
No. You are A-okay. I was just going to say, I think it's funny that you point out, the Vikings have invested some draft capital at the corner position. Byron Murphy is still under contract as far as I know. So like he's probably coming back. Yeah. And so I don't know that they're going to want to slam in a pick early for a corner after they've kind of thrown a lot of doubts at this bout over the last couple of years. But one name that I've seen come to the Vikings in the second round in some of these 2-round mocks that we're doing is Kalen King, who is, he is praised for being one of the better corners out of Penn State, by the way. He's a little undersized at 5'11", but like what is 5'11" to 6 foot? Not really. He everyone was kind of hyping him up as he could be cornerback 1 going into this season. And he had a really good year until he played Marvin Harrison. And it's just like he got his lunch eaten by Marvin Harrison, it felt like. And then he didn't look good at the Senior Bowl. It kind of felt like his year was like, it wasn't super impressive. So it was like, okay, well, he'll still be a first-round pick. Like, he's still a good corner. He's just not showing, like, the eliteness that we would want out of him. And then he played Marvin Harrison, and that put his life into a downward spiral. And so he goes from being like first round pick to maybe a second round pick to doofuses like me saying, no, don't touch him. I don't want any piece of him. I'm just kind of out on him. Getting into a guy who I like, who also has some issues of like, yeah, he didn't look that good. And the reason I'm bringing him up is because I think he's a late round pick. Cam Hout out of Notre Dame. Tell me if you see a trend here with my scouting. There's a lot of gold domos in my scouting reports, but I like Cam Hout. I think he's physical. He's a very willing tackler, which I like a lot in my corners.
Yep.
And he has one of my traits. I make a joke on this show all the time about how I want my corners to be like 6'3" and long, or I want them to be like 5'8" and mean. And Cam Hout fits the 6'3". I think this says 6'2", but I think I've seen 6'3" more than I've seen 6'2", but whatever. He's 6'2". We'll go with that. He has long arms, and like I said, he's just a really good tackler, and he kind of plays that off coverage style where it's like keep everything in front of you and then break and make the tackle, potentially jump out if you get the chance to. And he's pretty quick as well, so I like Cam Hout a lot out of Notre Dame. He would be a nice like mid to late round pick. There's one guy, I can't find him. Hang on, let me find him. I just wanted to point out he's a potential UDFA, I think. Yes, and this is probably just because of his name, but Storm Duck. Yes, out of Louisville is eligible in this draft. He is incredibly aggressive as a tackler. He comes at you like a safety. He has, strong hands. He's quick to react. He goes after interceptions, and that's what I love about him. Is like, you have a name like Storm Duck. You better be aggressive in the way that you play. The problem is, he tends to bite and get bounced a little bit too often. And then he does, because he gets bounced a little too often, he then overcorrects and just plays way too conservative and gives up things. underneath and that kind of a stuff. So he's a guy who, like, look, we're talking about like 6th, 7th round pick in Stone Duck, but he went to Louisville. I love me some Louisville Cardinals, and also he has one of the best names in this draft. So I would feel
It reminds me of Smoke Monday. I don't know if you remember him. He played
Smoke
for
Monday.
Auburn.
Yep.
Just the name, one of the best names.
The best name in college football. I think he was like a quarterback that transitioned to tight end for Oklahoma. It was General Booty, which was like, yeah, really good. And I can't wait for the new NCAA game to come out so I can make my General Booty dynasty, and, move him back to QB or whatever. But yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot. I think this is a pretty decent Colonel class. I think that the thing about Colonels is you obviously have like the top ones that everyone knows their names, and who knows if they'll pan out, but everyone knows about them and everyone pays attention. What I think the Vikings have actually been kind of successful at is finding these guys in the late rounds that they're not coming in here like Darrell Revis or Sauce Gardner, this all-time Colonel talent, but they contribute at a pretty decent level. Like, I don't think a Caleb Evans is some scrub. I don't think Mekhi Blackman was bad. Like, I just don't think they are good enough. I would like an upgrade there, but I don't know if I want to spend the draft capital.
Yeah, I think to that point, it all depends on if this team is going to try and compete with a capital C in 2024, but there's definitely validity and merit to the approach of give Blackman, Booth, Evans, those guys another year to mature, another year to improve. Because, like you said, they've all only played 1 or 2 years in the NFL. Who's to say that they're finished products? They probably aren't. And so there's probably a lot of room for growth there and upward trajectory remaining. So to that point, like we were talking about earlier, maybe for 2024, you go get a veteran who's maybe at the tail end of his career, but still has a year or two left. So anyway, I think there's no possibility of going and getting a corner in the draft, but to your point, I think there's other needs that are more pressing at this point. The thing that the Vikings and especially Adolfo Menza has been apt to do here in his couple years is trade back and get a bunch of picks. So the Vikings currently have 9, but by the end of the night on Saturday in Detroit, they might end up having more like 13. So Who knows all the wheeling and dealing that Kwesi's going to do. And if that becomes the case, then maybe you end up, drafting a couple extra guys.
Yeah, and I think moving on into the next position, because the last position we have is offensive guard. As as me and Will simultaneously, by the way, put it so elegantly, not good enough to be tackles, not smart enough to be centers. And you guys know my opinion on offensive and defensive interior linemen. I want meat. I'm tired of these Nancy boys and their 6 foot 280-pound bodies going out there and getting blown up, unable to get an inch in Cincinnati, and then I have to drive home with Bengals fans who are all intoxicated, yelling at me that my team sucks. It was a terrible experience, all because we couldn't get an inch on a third and short and a fourth and short. So I would like to build, and I've said this on the show before, I would like to build an offensive line where if we need 2 yards, we can basically say offensive line, go get the 2 yards, and quarterback just walk behind them. And so I tried to pick some guys. Cooper Beebe is one of the bigger name guards. Again, probably talking about a first or second round pick. I'm not going to spend a ton of time. He's good. He's big. He's strong. He played at Kansas State. I like him. I do like him, but I'm not going to spend a ton of time now. This is where it gets interesting, because the best guard in this class, I believe, is Zach Zinto out of Michigan. And he is the guard who had an awful leg injury against Ohio State this year, was carted off the field. It was like super emotional. There were people who were doubting he'd ever play football again. And maybe it's because I was such a Teddy Bridgewater fan, but I love me some redemption stories from freak leg injuries. And Zach Zinto, if other teams are going to be scared off to let him fall into like the 4th round, I think it's a no-brainer at that point that you take him. Obviously, he's not going to play for you this year, so you're going to have to find a starting guard for this season. So that might mean another year of Ed Ingram. And if that turns you off and that makes you, no, I'm tired of it. I want it now. I want the O-line fixed now. I get it. I understand it. I understand that viewpoint. I would take Zento. I would let him rehab that leg, get back to the level he was playing at. And then I think he almost immediately would be one of the best guards in the NFL. He is 6'6". He is a massive man. He is a road grader. You guys watched Michigan play football at some point this year, I'm sure. Like, he's just really good at football, man. Like, he's just mean in the inside. You saw how Michigan liked to pound the ball, too. He's gonna, I think, help the run game out big time. And he's no schmuck on his feet, either. He's not some, immovable object that can't get to the side. Like, that's what makes him special, is he can pull and get to the outside and do those kinds of things. So, Zach Zento would be like if he falls due to injury, I think you take him and then you let him play next year. And I hate that one of our picks this year isn't going to give value for that long, but you really look at it like an investment at that point. And then do you have a statement? Because
I was just going to say, with that approach, would you then want to draft another one, or would you want to go get somebody? Because right now they got nobody. They've got Ed Ingram, and that's it.
You're obviously going to have to sign some depth pieces, but I would let Ed Ingram and how do I forget the guy's name? The guy that we saw?
Reisner.
Thank you.
Go get Dalton Reisner back.
And bring Dalton Reisner back on like a 1 or 2 year deal as like a prove it type of deal. I don't think he's going to demand high dollars for what he did with the Vikings. Like, he was okay. And so I don't think the offensive line at any point made me say, oh my God, this is terrible. Like, I think they've been serviceable for a couple of years. Zento would be an investment piece that said, we're taking the necessary steps to get to that elite of the elite status. And Darisaul's still young. O'Neal is still relatively young. Like, it's not like you're, dealing with like Jason Peters or Trent Williams as your left tackle, where it's like, well, we can only really count on him for 1 or 2 more years to be him, and then he might start slipping. So I like the Zach Zento. If we were able to get him, I would be over the moon. Final guy I'll talk about is another just big sack of potatoes. CJ Hansen at a Holy Cross, I believe is what it's called. Yeah, Holy Cross. He's a senior. He's 6'6", 300 pounds. This is where some people I think are going to be a little bit turned off by him. He is kind of like good in the run game in that like zone scheme, not so good in pass protection because he kind of gets bowled over. But he's 6'6". Clearly something's up. That man should not be 300 pounds. That man should be like 1,000,000 pounds. I don't know body types and
330.
weights. Yeah, like he would put on weight, I think, and he would get into an NFL weight and strength program. I think the frame is there, and this is like 7th round pick material, guys. So don't say that I'm Jordan said to take your 11th pick and spend it on a guard that's not very good. The body, you can't get taller as an adult, right? We all know that, right? So you have a 6'6" frame. You have someone who is actually pretty decent at this whole like zone run scheme thing and pulling and getting to the second level and doing all that. Go make him fat and see if he can still do it. And put some weight on him, put some muscle on him, get him stronger, and say, can you now do both? Can you keep the agility that you've had while tacking on about 25 pounds and adding some strength so you can actually like anchor in and push some of these guys away? So CJ Hansen, if we could scoop him up in like the 6th, 7th round, have him come in, learn, get stronger, get bigger. He would be like a project depth guy that I would really like. And again, I mean, you're almost just drafting the bones of this man because you want to see if you can mold him into what you want. But you can't teach being a 6'6" man. That's one of those, like, yeah, you can cut weight and you can try to get more agile and you can learn how to run better routes. You can't learn how to be 6'6". So I like CJ Hansen for that reason and almost that reason alone.
Yep. Yeah, I think it brings up an interesting point because, obviously you would want an offensive guard that is both good at pass blocking and run blocking, right? You would want to have Steve Hutchinson and just that's what you're running behind all the time. That's who's blocking for your quarterback. But there's also a world where Dalton Reisner is a really good pass blocker, but he's a so-so run blocker.
Yep.
And Ed Ingram is a really good run blocker and a pass blocker. And so, in your opinion, would you prefer the Vikings prioritize a pass blocking first guard or a run blocking first guard?
That depends on the Kirk Cousins decision. And that is truly like we've said this a lot over the last few months of shows, but so much of the decisions that are going to be made depends on what happens in 2 weeks with Kirk Cousins and whether he goes and signs with Atlanta or Kwesi brings him home and keeps him a Viking. Because if we keep Cousins, I want the pass block. I want Cousins kept safe. And my dog is mad because someone's walking their dog across the street. But no, I want Cousins kept safe in a clean pocket. He's coming off an Achilles. We can't really risk him getting re-injured. The team goes to, hell in a handbasket. If we move up and we draft a guy like Jaden Daniels, okay, well, suddenly some of that pressure is like mitigated by his ability to just be one of the fastest guys on the field at all times. And so maybe I would rather have the run blocking guys. That way, when we do call a QB option, or we do call just a straight up run with Chandler, Madison, whoever the running back ends up being. We should do running backs at some point because I love the running backs in this class. But then you have the ability to help your young quarterback not have to throw 50 times a game, get a run game established, and let him be more of that game manager as he figures some things out at the NFL level. Because you can't expect him to just come in on day one and be C.J. Stroud or be Pat Mahomes. You just can't. I mean, I know that those stories are cool, and it's awesome to see these guys that go out and they win MVP or they're contending for MVP in their first season as a stout or whatever. That's just not usually how it happens. Usually it happens that they struggle a little bit and then they get better. And then like year 3 is the big explosion. So I'm going to really quickly just plug the Twitter at LTB Vikings or the X at LTB Vikings. Plug this man's X at Will Badlose and also the Bad Loser blog. Make sure you guys are checking that out, especially with baseball season coming up. I'm sure Will is going to have some chef's kiss primo baseball stuff going up on the Bad Loser blog. And also check out Purple PTSD VikingsTerritory.com. My final thoughts are this is when it all gets going, right? Like all these teams are meeting in Indianapolis and they're all colluding and they're talking to agents and they're doing all this stuff and my kid is going nuts. This is when like it really starts getting to go. Legal tampering opens in like 2 weeks, so we're about to have like the blueprint for win championships are won, because this is when championships are won, is with the decisions that are being made as we speak. Kwesi's having gin and tonic with some other GM discussing what he wants for Justin Jefferson right now. It could be happening. Cousins' agent is talking over whatever other alcoholic drink with the Falcons and saying, theoretically, if I represented a quarterback coming off an Achilles, I would want X amount of dollars for that guy. Not my actual client, but they're doing all these word play and there's tampering happening right now. So it's fun. It's electric. My kid's having a meltdown, so I'm going to take care of that. But thank you guys, Will. Final thoughts and take us home.
Yeah, really, really fast final thought from me. Kirk Cousins, check out his Instagram, please. He got his golden grills today. I don't know if you saw this, Jordan. He made the promise a couple Thanksgivings ago, after the Thanksgiving win against New England, talking about, hey, I should maybe get me some of those grills. He did. So just check it out. It's fantastic. It's marketing genius from the dorkiest NFL quarterback in the league. Check it out. It's fantastic. We love Kirk, whether or not he's here again next year. We will be back next week. We'll be talking something spicy might happen. It might be Kirk Cousins news. It might be more draft talk. It might be, oh my gosh, that player destroyed all the metrics at the combine. Who knows? We got lots to talk about. It's getting fun. It's getting real. We'll talk to you next week. Skull y'all.